Welcome to Talkin Ball with Scotty and Sergio. How you doing, brother?
I'm great, my man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm pumped. Just watch Kristaps Porzingis return for the Dallas Mavericks. I woke up this morning to have a big trade. But guys, today's show, we're going to run through the new COVID protocols for every team. Kyrie Irving's partying and he hasn't returned to the Brooklyn Nets. Is loyalty still in the NBA for these players? LeBron's no-look three-pointer. But the main thing, Harden has been traded. Houston Rockets have got away from James Harden. We have all the trades here, Serge. Let me just quickly run through this. So the Brooklyn Nets acquired James Harden and a second-round pick from the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Houston Rockets acquired Dante Exum, Victor Oladipo, Rodion Kurucs, 4 first-round picks three from Brooklyn, 1 from Cleveland, and 4 first-round pick swaps from Brooklyn. The Indiana Pacers got a second-round pick from Houston and Karis LeVert. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince. I woke up to this. You were seeing this happen tonight. Serge, here we go. He's gone. Finally, the Houston Rockets are off James Harden.
Yeah, I was actually playing tennis and checking my phone in between. I was like, wow. And I think I messaged you and I'm like, well, Kyrie did this to himself, because I looked at it and I immediately thought they traded Kyrie for him, and then you sent me the details. So it was surprising, but it was something that needed to happen. Harden was just, and especially with Harden's last press conference was a bit too much when he just said the team wasn't good enough. That's when people started to turn on him. I think even Boogie Cousins had mentioned that the situation was just too much and had been too much since the beginning.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't planning on talking about this today without my knowledge. This had happened. I was going to talk about those interviews where James Harden clearly looked done. He said it's over. We're not winning. The team's not good enough. The team's not good enough really because you're not there in your mind and your heart with this Houston Rockets team. But it's happened now. And the Nets, Kyrie Irving didn't get traded. Obviously, some stuff we'll talk about happening with him. But the Nets get their big three.
Yeah, it's insane. They're looking scary. The only question now, which it's on everyone's minds, like who's going to play defense there now that they lost a few pieces, and the Pacers came out pretty well. I feel they had a disgruntled player in Oladipo, and now they got LeVert.
Well, Oladipo is actually having a pretty good season. The Pacers have been playing really well, but he was in the final year of his contract. So you kind of want to trade him, see if you could get something for him. And Karis LeVert is a great return. He's been playing some great basketball coming off the bench. He can start or come off the bench. I think the Nets, for them, it's probably hard losing Jarrett Allen. DeAndre Jordan's obviously probably going to start at center. Maybe Jeff Green might play there a little bit. We'll see what happens. But Jarrett Allen was starting to really come into his own. He's a great defender.
I think Jarrett Allen had immense value, especially at his contract's $3.9 million, which is nothing. 100%. And he's a young guy with a bunch of upside.
Yeah, I looked at this trade, and in my head, I know obviously you got to think the Nets have won. They've got 3 All-Stars now. But the Pacers, that is a great pickup for the Pacers because they're still waiting on pardon me, what's his name? TJ Warren's coming back from injury, Jeremy Lamb. So they have a really deep bench with a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. Cleveland Cavaliers got Jarrett Allen. It's a bit of a funny one for me because it looked like Andre Drummond was their center of the future. He said he wanted to stay there. He was looking good. He's going to be coming off the bench backing up Andre Drummond now. So, yeah, a few teams went a few different directions. But the main thing is this going to push the Brooklyn Nets above the Los Angeles Lakers?
Yeah, you got to think. Let's go back 10 years. Let's think of what happened with Miami the first year they pieced those 3 stars together with Wade, Bosh, and LeBron, and it was tough. They didn't initially gel. No, they didn't know. LeBron didn't know that he had to be the number 1 player on the team, and eventually it showed in the finals. After they got it together in the regular season, but in the finals they weren't able to come through. So sometimes, and we see it a lot. I mean, I know you're a soccer guy as well. You see it a lot with big teams like Real, Barcelona. They buy the best players in the world, and they can put this amazing team together. and it doesn't always work.
Yeah, not always. Yeah, it's this is a little bit different to me to that kind of Miami situation the first year when they got to the finals and lost to the Dirk Jason Kidd and the Mavs, because I think Chris Bosh kind of really knew that he was the third piece, he was the third wheel, and they couldn't really figure out in that first season who was number one, whether it was LeBron or Dwayne Wade, and LeBron didn't really kind of take control in the finals. This one, I think Kevin Durant is definitely number one option. I think the second and third one's hard because Kyrie Irving's a bit of a mystery in all this. James Harden has to be your number two option.
Well,
But,
I like that you said that, but I don't know if James Harden's ever going to think he's a number two option on any team you put him on.
yeah, but will Kyrie Irving ever think he's a number three option on a team? That's the bigger one.
Yeah, my thoughts behind this trade is that this might have happened just because of his behavior, and I'm not too sure. I don't know if they plan to keep this big. They're gonna give it a try, but there's a big chance this big three won't work, I think.
We were talking just before the show. You were suggesting maybe Kyrie Irving gets traded, but we're literally just about to get into Kyrie Irving, what's been happening with him. But Kyrie Irving's never seemed like, to me, as one of those guys where you can just trade him anywhere and he's going to play his hardest. He wants to, apart from being drafted by the Cavs, he chose to go to Boston. He wanted to have his own team at a big team. Let's just say he gets traded somewhere, let's say to the Jazz or something for Rudy Gobert. Is he gonna want to play for the Jazz? Is he gonna turn up? Is he gonna play his hardest? Like, yeah, it's a tough one.
And as we were speaking, it's one of the issues that the NBA has, and a lot of people have praised in the past that the players do have a lot more power than, let's say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But that power also is dangerous because you get these situations where the players, they're just like, whatever, I'm not feeling comfortable in the situation, I want out and all this jazz. And it's kind of like they're forgetting that they're making 40 or 35 or whatever $1 million a year. Even if they're making $5 million a year, you get paid to do your job, irrespective of what team you're on, who's the coach, who's the president of the team. And you have to remember that your function is to put the ball in the basket and win games, not to speak about, like, yeah, it's great if you speak about other stuff that's going on in the world, but that's not your first task.
That's not what you're getting paid to do, and that's not what people like you and me. We both have a league pass, man. I'm struggling at the moment. COVID, a lot of people aren't working, but I'm paying to watch the basketball because I love it and I want to see the best players playing. Let's just get into it then. Kyrie Irving pretty much has been missing from Brooklyn Nets training. Videos came out of him at a party for his sister and his dad's birthday. And then there were some, I believe, Snapchat stories of him partying with Drake. Come on, man. You got to feel for Steve Nash at the moment. What has he inherited? He's thinking, I've inherited this great team. And it's also come out that Kyrie was furious at the Nets for not giving him more input into the hiring of the coach. He didn't want Steve Nash. And now it seems that his relationship with KD is just getting more and more distant. It's not looking good.
Yeah. Again, it starts with all these players that have spoiled the league. Like you have Harden, who is pretty much picking who gets traded, what coach he's going to play for. And then LeBron. LeBron also was a guy who has a lot of input. So Kyrie saw those things before, and he's just acting like he can demand. And I don't think he's gotten to the point where he can demand anything, and especially if he's not setting a good example for the rest of the team.
Talking about setting a good example, Kyrie is the vice president of the Players Association. You are the one who should be setting the best example for these guys. Kyrie earning 30 plus million a year. There are so many young guys who want your spot, even old guys, Isaiah Thomas and Jamal Crawford, who just want one more chance in the NBA to have a run at a title. And here you are. And Kyrie, we keep saying this, he does amazing work in the community. He speaks out about really important things outside of basketball. But your primary job is to play basketball, and that gives you the platform to make these changes and do these things. And Stephen A is coming out and say, maybe just retire until you realize you want to play basketball again.
Yeah, when I was watching that this morning, it was kind of a very, very strong statement. But I understand where he's coming from because you have one of the best jobs in the world. You love basketball and you get paid handsomely to do it. And then you're not even capable of giving an excuse to why you're absent. You're violating COVID rules that are putting at risk your players and their families, etc. So all these things are just, it's not showing a lot of maturity. And it is really sad for someone who does hold that position as vice president, because those are the face of the league.
It's just selfish. It just seems really selfish to me. And Kevin Durant, what's going through his head at the moment? Maybe it's changed a little bit now with James Harden there, but before this happened, few hours ago, he'd have to be sitting there going, "What have I got myself into here? I've got another All-Star who doesn't want to be here."
I'd love to see what their chats have gone, like if they're texting what's going on. Or, surely, no. I mean, I thought they were pretty tight.
That'd be an interesting group WhatsApp. Whew,
Yeah.
There'd be some interesting chat coming out of that.
And also those Snapchats with Drake. It's like, did he learn that from Harden? Just like hitting the clubs and stuff and just not caring.
Yeah. Serge, we'll get quickly into all the new COVID protocols. Obviously, we'll talk in the last podcast about things are starting to escalate again, and players are starting to get COVID twice. We've had 3 more postponed games just today: Utah versus Washington, Orlando at Boston, and the Hawks at Suns. All those games have been postponed. Serge, do you want to run us through the latest protocols quickly, what the players can and can't do?
For sure. There's a few things that have changed in comparison to the first protocols that were put in place at the beginning of the season. So players are not allowed to leave their homes though. And this is a big one because basically the only situation is for essential stuff, like to go to the supermarket, as when we were locked down. The funny thing is, I'm pretty sure most NBA players are not going to the supermarket for themselves. So this one, they're going to have to stay at home.
Yeah.
And also, when they're on the road, they can't leave the hotels. Any team meeting can't exceed 10 minutes and everyone has to be masked. So they've really shortened down that because a lot of team meetings, go half an hour, etc. So there's just less point of contact. On the road, like on the planes, the teams will be sitting starters with starters and bench players with bench players. Let me see what else. So any kind of treatment, any kind of therapy is going to be done in a larger room, like arena kind of area where there's more air. It's like more air, and everyone has to be fully masked and wearing a shield as well. On game day, players cannot arrive earlier than 3 hours. And this is a big one because there's a lot of players, I'm sure over the years, you guys heard stories of Kobe showing up like 8 hours before and putting up shots and all that jazz. And a lot of players still follow those examples and do show up very, very early to shoot. And now they can't. So it's 3 hours max. And any type of interaction, shaking hands, fist bumps, is really restricted and not encouraged. Okay. So this is a big one. Players, everyone who's sitting on the bench has to be masked. Coaches, you can't be pulling down your mask. And once you're playing, like let's say you get substituted out and you come out of the game, you have to go to a cool-off zone, which is about 12 feet away from the bench, and until you can catch your breathing, and then you have to put a mask on if you want to go sit on the regular bench.
Man, there's a lot of new rules. Even the testing has changed, Serge. So what I'm reading here is any players that visit inside the home of a player or staff member, they must undergo testing twice a week. Any team with a positive player, which there's a few of them now, or high-risk staff member case, the NBA may require players and staff to undergo 5 straight days of testing, twice a day per lab testing, in addition to daily point-of-care testing. So these guys, it's tough at the moment, and we understand that. Everyone's going through kind of not similar things. A lot of people are stuck at home, but the NBA players, for them to play and for this season to continue, and Adam Silver and the rest of the NBA, they want this season to continue. There's a lot of work that needs to be done by these players, Serge.
A lot of it just comes with kind of, because players can be checked and restricted, as we can see with all these rules, but it has to do with your own kind of responsibility, because there's a lot of things that, people can go to parties all the time and not get Snapchatted. And it's about how much the players care. And if you have players getting reinfected, well, that's another separate issue, because for a while, obviously, everyone thought once you get COVID, you don't get it again. but now we know that's not true, and you can get it again.
But
So
sorry, Sergio, but it's crazy because the selfishness you see with Kyrie Irving and all these things, these players who are trying to be sensible and who are getting it. No one knows the extent of COVID yet. This has been going for like a year. They're saying in some cases they're finding scarring on people's lungs and around their heart. So you think you're healthy, you're an athlete, you're not going to get the worst of it, but you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You might get someone in your family, your girlfriend, your partner sick. They might get sick and it might jeopardize their future health. And that's the reason the NBA is doing this. They've got to be really careful, and we can't obviously go back into a bubble. It won't work like that.
Although I really did like Aaron Gordon's idea. He's like, I'd be down for a bubble. Just go to the Bahamas and let everyone take their families and girlfriends and wives and just, Bahamas.
Do you think Lou Williams is allowed to take both his girlfriends, or he has to pick?
You probably take a few, right?
Yeah. Smuggle them in his suitcase.
There's a lot of Mormons in Utah, so I'm sure, the rules got to apply to everyone.
Serge, I wanted to ask Kendrick Lamar. Famous quote, I got loyalty and royalty inside my DNA. Is there any loyalty left in the NBA? The only guy that I can really think who's super loyal and he's going to stay with his team no matter what is Damian Lillard. But you obviously have Kyrie Irving here, James Harden. Is there any loyalty left?
Yeah, Damian Lillard so far we've seen, and I guess Giannis, you could say, he just signed that Supermax. It's tough. The precedent that LeBron set really changed the NBA. It kind of made it okay to bounce, and not kind of put pieces together and stay with your team. And for the LeBron thing was also, it's his hometown. So it was even a stronger kind of moment for someone to leave. And then it all kind of started happening after there. You got, KD and all that jazz leaving to go play for a team that he had lost to in the conference finals. It's hard. People are just and it goes outside of basketball salaries. They're not just leaving for money from the team because the NBA has done a good job of making contracts favorable for the team that holds you. As in you can get paid that extra fifth year and you can get paid more, bonuses and all that jazz. But now they're looking after their marketing. They're looking at themselves like a product, and they're thinking, do I want to put my product out in Charlotte, Milwaukee, Oklahoma? No, I want my product to be seen, my face to be seen, my mug to be seen in Miami, in New York, and LA. And that's the hard thing. And that's something the NBA is going to have to work a little bit harder on to kind of motivate players to stay in the smaller markets, I believe.
Well, I love that every time we always talk about super teams, everyone's very quick to jump on LeBron and what he did in Miami. But it was only a couple of years before that, Ray Allen left were the Sonics still around? I can't remember. And Kevin Garnett left Minnesota to join Paul Pierce in Boston to make the Big Three, which went on to win the title and make the finals twice against the Lakers. But the main reason, the reason we're talking about this, something popped up to me the other day in my Facebook feed. So I think it was in 2014, Dirk Nowitzki got offered a 3-year contract and $92 million for the Lakers and the Rockets. He turned both down to sign a 3-year, $25 million contract to stay with the Mavs. I don't think there's too many people as loyal as Dirk was. Dirk made $150 million in his career, which is a crazy amount of money. He could have easily doubled that if he chose to go somewhere else. I know the Lakers were chasing him for years. Him and Kobe had a really close relationship because they were both as hard workers as anybody. But I don't think there's that kind of loyalty anymore. I don't think people are turning down $60, $70 million to stay home.
No, it's just a different league. And Jordan, Barkley, a lot of guys have mentioned this. They're like, they were like, I'm never going to go play with Larry Bird in the 80s or team up with Charles Barkley in the early 90s. We wanted to kill each other. Yeah. But these guys are all chummy, and the team now, I mean, look at this. This is ridiculous, the 3 stars that they have. Yeah. But it's yet to be seen if they can put pieces around them to actually make it work. I don't really like it. I might be a little bit old school, and I just don't like all the stars going to New York and all these big markets. It's for me, it kind of ruins the league. And I'm not a fan of it. If you see with NFL here, the NFL somehow has been able to keep smaller markets very prominent, like Green Bay, Green Bay, or look at Tom
Yeah.
Brady, he's in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's not a huge market, but they have strong football cultures, and that attracts players.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see it. Like, I remember when I first started really getting into basketball, the early 2000s. I knew a bit before that, but the early 2000s, especially out west, every team seemed to have a really, really good player, like almost an all-star. There was Dirk was at the Mavs, Kevin Garnett was at the Timberwolves, Chris Webber was at the Sacramento Kings when they had a really good team with Mike Bibby and Peja Stojakovic, and every team seemed to have like kind of the face of their franchise, and it made these like matchups and the divisions, which you don't really talk much about, the Southwest Division, the Atlantic divisions. There were these teams were rivals. Houston had T-Mac and Yao Ming in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. These teams were great to watch, and it's a shame now because there's 10 teams who you just say every year, like, oh, they're not going to do anything this year because they don't have the firepower. And then a few more teams on top of that who, oh, they're not going to beat one of these teams in the playoffs. A couple of these teams used to lose in the first rounds. If you were the second, third seed, you might lose in the first round because you were coming up against a Dallas Mavericks or a Sacramento Kings or one of these teams. You're like, oh, this is not a first round playoffs. First round these days is like, let's sweep this team or a gentleman's sweep and let's move on. It's the competition isn't there anymore.
Yeah, and that's what the NBA was great at before. The way they structured the money in the NBA is great because the smaller teams still get a piece of all the revenue that the NBA produces. So that, and also the salary caps are really good because in other sports we don't see salary caps. But the point is, even if you have that money to spend in salaries, you just have to have the players that want to come and receive it from you, and that's something that there has to be something that changes for that to keep going.
Hopefully that'll change. You always want to see the smaller market teams make a run and do something good. Serge, we'll finish up there. Before we finish, we had the return of Kristaps Porzingis today. He played his first game coming back from injury. He had 16 points, 4 rebounds, 2 blocks in I think it was just 21 minutes, 4 of 9 from three-point range. It looks really good for the Mavericks. That's them shooting up that was their fourth win in a row. Luka Doncic, I just actually watched this game. This is probably the best game I've seen Luka play yet. 34 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 blocks, and 4 blocks and 2 steals in this game. 5 and 9 from three-point range. So Luka's starting to warm up into that MVP form now as Dallas win their 4th game in a row.
Oh, this is some weight off his shoulders for sure. It allows him to be even better, I believe, because now you just can't relax on Dallas because you have this guy. Porzingis is going to drop threes on you all day if you don't guard him, and then you have Luka who can do everything.
Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis he can shoot from anywhere, so he opens the space up for Luka and just makes the game so much easier. But
they're going to be a fun team to watch now. They were already fun to watch, but even more now.
Hell yeah. Especially once they get half their team is either in Denver still isolating, Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, Josh Richardson, Dwight Powell, Jalen Brunson. They're all missing because of COVID. So hopefully we can get all this COVID stuff sorted and all these teams like the Celtics and stuff who are missing players, the second half of the season, we can get on top of this and COVID can kind of hopefully disappear out of the league in that second stretch of the season before the playoffs. We'll start to see some really fun basketball from all these teams that are fully stocked. They'll have their whole teams back.
Let's hope. But what's your outlook? What do you think is going to happen?
I really don't know. I'm waking up every morning just hoping that it hasn't got worse because the worst thing that could happen in my life is the basketball stop because I'm loving watching the basketball every day. But only time will tell, Serge. Only time will tell. But thanks for talking to us, Serge. Thank you for waking up from your nap after a big tennis session. Thanks for listening, guys. Remember once we get this video on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. We'll post this on Facebook as well. I'm starting to post a few more things on Facebook, all the news that's happening. Hopefully, once Serge gets a new laptop, we'll be on Spotify as well. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Serge, peace out, brother.
Peace out.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Thanks, guys.